It's more difficult than ever before to fit both Salah and Haaland into your Game Week 1 FPL team. However, I've picked out two drafts that I really like the look of that have both of them in. In one of the drafts, I've even managed to squeeze in Gyökeres as well. Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I am going to attempt to fit both Haaland and Salah into a draft without compromising too much elsewhere. It's more difficult than ever, as we all know, but I think it is important to test these things in pre-season to see if there are combinations we like the look of, because undoubtedly there are going to be some of you that do want to have both of them in your Game Week 1 draft, and I don't think it's impossible to do so either. I've come up with two drafts today that I like the look of. There are some compromises, of course there has to be, but I like the balance of both of them. So of course, let me know what you think. If you enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit like, hit subscribe as well, and hit that notification bell as we approach Game Week 1. Obviously, I'm going to be posting my team. I'm going to be posting a lot of other videos. So if you hit that notification bell, you won't miss out on any future content either. But let's not waste any more time. Let's dive straight in with version 1 of the Game Week 1 draft. So my first version has nothing in the bank, but I have importantly managed to fit both Salah and Haaland into the same draft. Not only that, but I've also managed to fit in Victor Gyökeres up front as well. So I've still got that third fairly expensive option for a little bit more flexibility as well. Also, Gyökeres, it is worth noting, could also be Watkins. If you prefer Watkins from the start, just because of that safety net of minutes, you don't have to worry about whether or not he starts Game Week 1. That's absolutely fine. For what it's worth, I do think Gyökeres is likely to start Game Week 1, and I like those first two fixtures as well. So I wanted to have a go at trying to squeeze him into this draft as well, and I think it works fairly well overall. I don't think I'm compromising too much, but of course there are some compromises we need to talk about. So let's start off in the back line. I've still gone with at least one 6 million defender. Now obviously we've all got our favourites. I prefer Van Dijk. I could arguably see him being a player that I hold on to for the majority of the season. Not only does he get loads of clean sheets, he also gets great defensive contribution points, the odd goal as well, and he's absolutely locked in for minutes. He gets 90 minutes every single week. You can't say the same about a lot of other Liverpool defenders right now, or a lot of other defenders in those premium price points that also get that combination of def cons and some attacking returns as well. So Van Dijk, I think, just ticks all of those boxes nicely. But more importantly, I think it is not quite essential, but it is pretty important to have that 6 million price point covered in defense, just in case you need to hop down to a 5.5 million like Munoz, for instance, or hop across to an Ait Nouri if he starts looking almost undeniable and he just continues to score goals. You don't want to have to spend two transfers there. Across from that, I've gone with players that are very good on the defensive contribution points, but also not in bad defenses. So Anderson at 4.5 million, I think, is a bit of a steal. He didn't get so many points last season overall because he got injured, but the defensive contributions per start were very, very high, and he would have been up there very close to the likes of a Tarkowski or a Qua last season if he'd played the full 38, and he is locked into that side when fit. So at 4.5, I think that's a pretty decent bargain. And I think what I've done here is I've tried to have three playing defenders beyond Van Dijk that I can rotate every now and then, but also if I need to, I can rely on them most weeks, because the last thing I want to do is be using transfers in my defense every single week, trying to maximize the fixtures when I know that now that we've got DEFCON points, these kind of players are going to kind of drip feed points throughout the season on a fairly consistent basis. And a lot of people will think, well, won't they get more DEFCON points in the easier fixtures? That's actually not true. The data's been done. You can actually see that it's a fairly even distribution between the more difficult fixtures and the easier fixtures. So even if Anderson has, let's say, maybe not quite a Liverpool away, but a Nottingham Forest away or a Chelsea away, something like that, you might still be able to play him and he might still get 4 points for you as long as they don't concede too many goals. So again, I think that drip feed of points is good to have in the back line. Neco Williams for a fullback is very good on the defensive contributions, and also kind of went under the radar how good he was going forwards towards the back end of last season. He actually had better underlying attacking data than Ola Aina, who was a very popular pick and is about 18 or 19% owned right now. Williams at the same price is better on the DEFCON, better on the underlying attacking data, and probably about as nailed for minutes at 5 million. So I prefer Williams personally, but of course, this could be any 5 million defender. The reason I've gone with Williams, Anderson, and then Gahey. Gahey could be Richards, by the way, if Gahey moves to Liverpool in the transfer window. Same price, similar sort of contribution on DEFCONs, so either or would be fine. But essentially, what I'm trying to do here is cover off one particularly bad game week for Nottingham Forest. So if I hop across here, game week 4 is when they go up against Arsenal away from home. Other than that, very playable for the first 6 fixtures, but game week 4 is a problem against Arsenal. I don't love playing Neco Williams in that fixture. But in that game week, both Gahey and Anderson have very good fixtures, both at home to promoted clubs, Leeds and Sunderland, respectively. So, okay, you might not guarantee clean sheets in those fixtures, but you've got a good chance of them, and definitely a better chance than Arsenal away from home. So I think they rotate pretty well as a combination. But importantly, I could play them in pretty much any fixture. The final bench defender is Esteve or Esteve. I'm not actually completely sure. Burnley fans, please let me know. But again, 4 million option, rarely ever going to start him. But what I am going to do is, in a crisis, if I need to lean on him, because I think he'll be very good on the defensive contribution points, he might be good for a 3 or a 4 pointer every now and then. So it might save me from taking a hit if I'm in a little bit of a pickle and I've got injuries galore. So rather than taking a hit, I'll just take the 3 or 4 points from him, or hope for the 3 or 4 points from him, and raise that floor a little bit rather than needing to take the hit. Now, moving into the midfield, this is where compromises are. Now, as you can see, I've got 6.5s and under galore there. Salah obviously is in captain game week 1, although arguably you could go for Haaland. But outside of that, I've gone for 3 6.5 million options. Now, this is where the main issue with this draft starts to occur, because you've not got a lot of flexibility here. If any sort of midfielder beyond that price point starts looking really tempting, let's say Rodgers at 7 million, or Eze at 7.5, or even Wirtz at 8.5, let alone you've got Palmer and Saka as well, could all do really well. It's going to be quite difficult to get there without redistributing funds from either Haaland or Salah, or Gyökeres, to be fair, as well. But Ndiaye is fairly locked in 90-minute man on penalties, so I'm fine with that. Good opening run of fixtures. And not bad on the DEFCONs for what used to be a striker as well. Ismail Assar has phenomenal underlying attacking data for his price point. In fact, even slightly better than Eberiche Eze, his teammate, albeit not as good on minutes and not on penalties. So that is maybe a mark against him. So another little compromise there. And then Declan Rice is one of the least exciting picks you could possibly imagine. You probably looked at this draft and saw Rice and thought, what the hell is he doing? But the reason Declan Rice is there is because he ticks along really nicely. It's not a transfer you're ever going to need to make. You can play him in pretty much any fixture. He gets the DEFCON points. He also isn't too bad on the underlying attacking data now that he's playing more advanced in that left-hand 8 role. And again, like most of these players, absolutely locked in for 90 minutes most weeks. And he's on a fair few set pieces, including those free kicks as well. So Declan Rice, boring, but I have a feeling he's going to tick along very nicely. And if you added in the defensive contribution points from last season, he would have beaten a lot of midfielders that we would consider exciting picks last season. He would have hit something like 160, maybe even approaching 170 points if in a good season. So I think Rice is a decent pick, if albeit quite unexciting. And I think this is where the compromise is. You've got those 6.5s and there's a lot of them there. The final compromise is playing Elliot Anderson every single week, or at least most weeks. Now, again, a bit like Declan Rice, kind of a Declan Rice Jr. in a way, because he's got a few set pieces. The underlying attacking data is not good, but it's not so awful that he won't get any. He got 8 attacking returns last season, so 1 in about 4 or 5 games. And importantly, those defensive contributions are extremely high, even higher than Declan Rice, in fact, quite considerably higher as well. So he'll tick along nicely with 4 points a week most weeks. And although that's unexciting, uninspiring, because you've got Salah and Haaland and Gyökeres, they can be your explosions. They can be the players that massively kick off. You've got captaincy covered. And if the rest of the 11 are kind of drip feeding you those DEFCON points and getting clean sheets and getting the odd attacking return as well, then I think it might work out fairly well. However, looking across this, I don't think it's the most exciting 11. What you've got is 3 very exciting players, and then arguably a 4th with Sarr, if you can count that. After that, it is quite steady Eddie, quite boring. So I've got a version B, which takes some money out of the striker position, out of Gyökeres/Watkins, and redistributes it into the midfield. And maybe that will be a little bit more interesting to you. A quick word before we move on. A couple of players I haven't mentioned. Sanchez in goal covers off that Chelsea clean sheet. They've got good fixtures to start the season. That could be any 5 million keeper, of course, but I do quite like Sanchez. Defensive data is looking good. He looks fairly locked in, and Chelsea's fixtures are good. Then you've got on the bench any random 4.0. Kinski looks as good as any. He might be in a bit of a battle with Vicario for that starting spot. And then finally, last on my bench is Mark Yu. Now, at the moment, he's at Chelsea, so not much of an option. 4.5 million striker, but there are heavy links with him moving to Sunderland. So what I've done here is I've put the fixture, if he was playing for Sunderland, in game week 1 on the screen. So Gu against West Ham at home. Again, you're not looking to start him. Maybe, arguably, could be playable on a bench boost in game week 1 if he does move to Sunderland. But again, that's kind of a placeholder for any random 4.5 million striker. I think Gu is as good as any, especially if he does get that move to Sunderland. And if he does, I think he'll be the most popular pick. Like I said, West Ham at home is if he does move. But if he doesn't, then it's Crystal Palace at home and he's a non-playing 4.5 option that you're not starting. So hopefully that's fine. Hopefully that makes sense. For now, let's move on quickly to the second version of the draft, which might be a little bit more exciting. Okay, so version B has 3 very small changes that redistributes the funds from up front and just piles that money a little bit into the midfield, upgrading a couple of those 6.5 million options. So most of the 15 is the same, so this section probably won't take quite as long. But what I've done is I've taken the 9 million striker spot down to a 7.5. I've picked Solanke, but it could be a João Pedro because we don't have any Chelsea coverage, of course. Palmer is a compromise. So João Pedro could be that 7.5 if you like him. It could be Chris Wood, who has a great run of opening fixtures, albeit you'd then be tripled up on Nottingham Forest. It could be a number of other 7.5s, or if you want to get a bit more money out of that forward line, you could take it down to a 6.5 like a Strand Larsen or a Danny Welbeck or an Evan Nilsson at 7 million as well, and free up those funds to maybe upgrade elsewhere. So let's say you take Solanke all the way down to Strand Larsen, you've got an extra million to upgrade Eze to a Florian Wirtz, for instance. Or you could upgrade a couple of the defenders. Williams could become a Milenkovic or Murillo, or all the way up to another 6 million option. So a few examples there of how you might redistribute the funds and make it work. But I quite like this balance. I think it's a well-balanced 11 and it has the funds fairly well distributed into the midfield and it makes it just a little bit more flexible. So Solanke's in, Burnley at home in game week 1 and has a good run of fixtures outside of Man City in game week 2 and should be on penalties, should get good underlying attacking data up front for Thomas Frank Spurs. In midfield, what I've done is I've upgraded Ismaila Sarr to Eberiche Eze. As I mentioned, Sarr does have better underlying attacking data, but Eze has the penalties and some of the set pieces. So I personally prefer Eze, but Sarr could explode and have a really hot run. Eze, I think, is the safer pick, and he will consistently get those points, and it's always nice to have a penalty taker in there. But again, Sarr, it might not be that much of a compromise, so you might not want to use that extra million in that way, but you can use it in other ways. Rodgers has then appeared in place of Declan Rice. Again, like I said, Declan Rice is arguably a little bit of a steady Eddie, quite boring drip feed kind of pick. Rodgers might provide you with a little bit more upside. He doesn't get defensive contributions, but he does get a fair few attacking returns, just as locked as Declan Rice in the starting 11, a 90-minute man. The data wasn't sensational last season. In fact, it wasn't that much better than Declan Rice, but I think the upside is there, and I think he's on a bit of a curve upwards in the attacking data now. He's a young player, he's improving, he's obviously very important to Villa and to Unai Emery, and I can see his data going up another few notches this season in that Villa lineup. So again, Villa have a great run to start the season. I'd have no problem with using that extra 0.5 that you've still got spare from downgrading Gyökeres or a Watkins to Solanke and using it in the midfield to upgrade Rice to a 7 million option like Rodgers. So this is option 2. I think it has a little bit more upside in the midfield. You've got some more explosive picks in there. Less good on the defensive contributions, but again, you might have weeks where a couple of these players score goals and overtake those who are just drip feeding you the DEFCON points. Solanke is a compromise from a Gyökeres or a Watkins, but I don't think it's that much of a compromise. So you might prefer this. Let me know in the comments below whether you prefer option 1 or option 2. I think I might very slightly prefer option 2, but I do get the appeal of having that 9 million striker, whether it is a Gyökeres, whether it is a Watkins. That is quite tempting to go with that very explosive forward line, and then you drip feed the points elsewhere. I think that does make sense to some extent. So let me know which you prefer. If you enjoyed today's video, leave a like, hit subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss out on any future content. And if you're looking at a draft of Salah and Haaland, let me know if this is anywhere near to what you're currently shaping up as. If you're not on a draft of Salah and Haaland and you just wanted to watch this video to see whether or not it tempts you, let me know. Did it tempt you at all, or are you still completely put off? Because I am tempted. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but looking at the shape of these two drafts, I don't think you're compromising an outrageous amount. So I think it is possible to do it. So let me know in the comments below what you think of that, and I'll see you next time as we get closer and closer to game week 1.